Welcome to week 5, and we have a formidable study before us for this week because Paul's argument beginning in 5:12 is, by all accounts, difficult to follow, and I think it is fair to say somewhat convoluted. He offers various apparent clarifications that seem like digressions, qualifications, and one can very easily lose her way trying to track with the thread of Paul's argument. I'm not sure that my exposition will have done much to clarify it for you. I have tried, and at the very least, I hope that it will perhaps bring some focus to our discussions and questions in Response Forum 2. We had some great discussion this past week, and I think some good sort of teasing out of the pastoral, political sensibilities of the argument that Paul is making that enable us then to articulate what sort of feet on the ground these words have. I hope you'll remember as we press those kinds of questions, and those kinds of questions are important to press, that Paul's words do require you and me as readers, as interpreters, as members of communities to make judgments, to, you might say, embody what they mean for them to land. We can sometimes imagine that Paul's argument has its own legs independently of what we do with the words. But I don't think that is actually how it works. And so I hope that you will feel invited and maybe even by the study of the course empowered to wrestle and make your own judgments about what these words look like in the life that we're currently living, in the life that we're called to live, and consequently, not to expect Paul to say something that without our interpretation already clearly lands. Of course, it's true that this argument, which at this stage is deep in the story of God's revelation across the past of the life of Israel and indeed the whole world, is going to end up landing in some very particular ways in the latter chapters of the letter. But you can tell, hopefully, from the way that I'm interpreting the letter in the podcast expositions each week, in the way I'm framing some of the questions, that we need to already anticipate that landing of the letter's argument in the way that we make sense of it now. You can probably detect here a certain misgiving that I have about any kind of clean separation between theory and practice. I do think that can be a useful distinction, but I worry sometimes that we imagine that our theories are practically innocent, and I don't think that they ever are. All of our theorization itself is done from and for particular contexts, whether we name them or not. And so even now at this stage in the letter's argument, we are already engaged in a variety of pastoral embodied meanings in the way that we interpret and read the letter. So keep that coming. Those questions, they're welcome. And in fact, they're necessary. We have to press the questions and we have to make the judgments as we wrestle with what the text means to be able to see how these words are living and how they might live. A quick reminder to you that this week 5 is the week before you'll be submitting your interpretive working paper for peer review. That's going to come at the end of next week, week 6. And it's the kind of assignment that requires patience. and slow work that is struggling with a particular passage of the letter, that you now have been developing some skills to be able to interpret soundly. Skills that involve attention to the thread of the argument across the letter rather than parachuting in as if a passage were an independent fragment or unit. Skills that are about being attentive to the rhetorical or pastoral purpose, to what end Paul is saying what he's saying, and allowing that to inform your interpretation of the development of the argument in your passage. Skills that hopefully enable you to keenly notice where there is a point of pressure, a turn in the argument that Paul is making, perhaps an ambiguity that deserves to be scrutinized, a rhetorical shift, the subversive use of boasting, for example, that needs to be unpacked to render its meaning clear. So these are some of the skills that our class thus far has been attempting to cultivate, and you're going to need time to be able to apply those skills in the investigation phase of the one passage that you're going to be studying, both for your interpretive working paper and your advanced interpretive paper at the end of the class. Note that those are the only two formal assignments for the class. As you've probably gathered by now, the bulk of the work for this class really comes in the week-to-week engagement with the text and with the various ways that people, including me, are interpreting the text. And that, I think, because of how dense the letter is a useful way to approach it. And I must say, I appreciate the vigorous and enthusiastic engagement with the questions and the prompts that I've been seeing in the forums thus far. Keep that coming, because I hope you'll find that that kind of regular rhythmic engagement with the text yields large dividends in terms of your learning across the whole letter, as opposed to kind of dropping in here, dropping in there. The learning of this class is meant to be cumulative by spreading the burden of the class out across really the whole 10 weeks, as opposed to having a lot of formal assignments here and there. You have only two: this working paper that is coming up, and then an advanced interpretive paper, as I said, that's going to be on the same passage that you do your working paper on. So once again, you'll find in this week's work the assignment guide for the interpretive working paper, some sample papers. I hope by now you've chosen the passage that you're going to study, and that this week, with the reading being a little lighter, as you'll notice, make some time to begin mapping out your paper and perhaps begin actually putting pen to paper or striking the keys on your computer to produce a written analysis of the passage, which is essentially what this paper is. Also, want to remind you that this week, as last week, you will have video conference options for your discussion groups. We had some great video conferences this past week and week 4, I thought. I hope those of you who participated in them also found them to be useful. Those are, the fact that we have those as an option requires that everybody opt into their group each week, whether it's for a video conference group or for a non-video conference group. So once again, you'll need to opt into your group as soon as possible, definitely by Wednesday, so that we can get a feel for where people are going to be lined up in their groups. And then just a reminder too, that if you opt to join a video conference group because the time works for you and you'd like to have that kind of interaction with others and with me, then you do that, you participate in that video conference in lieu of a post to the second response forum. So you don't need to contribute anything in writing to the response forum 2. You need only write that initial response in response forum 1 in that group. And then the video conference also covers you for your interaction with group members for the week. So, of course, I would be delighted for you to comment on others' posts or to post something in response for them too if you're in a video conference group, but you don't need to do either of those things to fulfill your requirements for the week. So I hope that's clear. I hope that's at least some incentive for you to give the video conference a try. And again, if you're finding that the times that I'm proposing are just missing you, please let me know so that in a future week, I can try to hit a window that is in your life for you to be able to join a video conference group. Let me just reiterate as you head off to study this week's material that I think you will find the passages, especially the first one, 5:12 to 21, extremely difficult. Probably frustrating, and that the podcast exposition will, I hope, offer some illumination, but leave you, I am sure, still with many questions and places where you're puzzled. Don't hesitate to bring those up in your forum responses to one another, to me, and I look forward to the discussion. Have a great week.